name is Louisa Reyes, and I am so happy to be participating in the Prattville Library's Author Expo. I have had the pleasure of participating the last couple of years or so, and it's always such a nice event. I really enjoy it. As far as about me, I teach law by day. I teach at Judson and at Auburn, and I have recently taken up writing. It came as a surprise to me, actually. If you had asked me in high school that I could ever do creative writing, I would have probably given you a strange look and said undoubtedly no. But it has been a talent that I have discovered quite by accident. Actually, I responded to a call I saw several years ago from the Alabama Meter Readers Society. They were having an Alabama Limerick contest, and I had never written a limerick before in my entire life. So I started writing them and submitting them, and I got really good response, and from there it grew to poetry, and then nonfiction writing, and now fiction writing, and it just seems to be an ever-expanding field for me, and I really, really enjoy it. The story I'm going to share with you today is called Inherited History. It was published in the 2020 annual by the Elizabeth River Writers. Inherited History. And taking with her nothing but a dress she sewed herself and her own horse, Maria Ware left her father's white column plantation to elope with her true love. Lynn smiled as she listened to the nonagenarian Miss Ginger tell the familiar story. For the tale of how her fourth-great maternal grandmother had defied her father's wishes to elope with the impoverished Brandon Covington was one Lynn had heard repeated quite often throughout her childhood. For her mother, Kathleen, was the family genealogist and folklorist, so they frequently traveled throughout the barely trodden wilds of the national forest to hunt up some of the elderly ladies who were only too thrilled to welcome someone who was interested in their stories from long ago into their meager wooden dwellings. Being elderly, the small wooden shacks were usually well heated, and today was no exception. For Lynn could feel the beads of perspiration forming along her forehead and falling down the back of her neck, while Miss Ginger appeared to be perfectly content in her flower-printed homespun dress, reciting the story of Maria Ware with a small blanket made of yarn resting on her lap. Was he very handsome? Lynn asked, taking everybody by surprise. But it was a question she had often pondered since she was old enough to consider the import of Maria's elopement. No one ever mentioned whether or not Brandon Covington was possessed of old Hollywood movie star good looks, and Lynn found it hard to believe that Maria could abandon the more affluent lifestyle her father had to offer for Covington's meager brush arbor without a compelling reason. I suppose he was, replied Miss Ginger after a moment's pause, during which time Lynn felt the warning look of hush boring down on her heavily from her mother's eyes that had become ever more round with astonishment. But I can't say that I ever heard anybody say so. However, my daddy was the best-looking man I ever saw, so it must be so. There's my daddy right there, Miss Ginger said, while pointing to a small black and white picture that was hanging on the living room wall, prompting Lynn's mother to jump up and look at it while exclaiming, "Oh, such a dapper-looking young man. Don't you think so, Lynn?" The truth was that Lynn didn't particularly think so. But if she hunted and pet, there was something appealing by the three-piece suit he was wearing and his hat that was placed at an ever so slightly rakish angle that allowed her to nod somewhat truthfully in agreement, much to the delight of Miss Ginger, who blissfully continued on with the story. After a while, Dr. Ware relented somewhat and offered Maria and her husband a cow to help them out, which they accepted only because it was for the children. Now, this detail really grabbed the attention of both Lynn and her mother, who found themselves sitting up more erectly than before, for this was one tidbit they had not heard previously. "Oh, do tell!" Lynn and her mother both eagerly begged of Miss Ginger, since it was these unique details that each elderly lady seemed to have that made listening to the old familiar stories of bygone years worth the while. "But the cow got sick after only 1 week and passed away," she continued, leading to sighs of sympathy being expressed all around. So rather than giving another cow, Dr. Ware gave them a goat instead, which they kept for several years. This being another unexpected detail which brought a smile to both Lynn and her mother's faces. And with the warmth of the small living room ever increasing, Lynn reached for her long hair and tossed it behind her shoulders. "Such pretty hair you have," Miss Ginger stated with much enthusiasm, which made Lynn's smile broaden, for the elderly ladies they visited seemed to always comment on her long dark hair. "Which reminds me, I saw y'all's picture on the front page of the newspaper," and reaching underneath some items on her coffee table, Miss Ginger soon retrieved 2 copies of last Sunday's local newspaper. "Since I knew y'all were coming, I saved mine for you, and my neighbor gave me her copy as well." "That is so very sweet," Lynn's mother gleefully exclaimed, with Lynn concurring. "I was thinking about going to the newspaper office to buy some more copies, and now I don't have to. Oh, this is wonderful." For Kathleen was featured in the foreground, and Lynn was featured in the background of the prominent picture on display on the very front of the newspaper. Being part of a property rights group that was questioning the methods the city was using to condemn some houses in an area that was once prominent but had since been upended by bigger and grander homes that were built across the river, Lynn and Kathleen had inadvertently become the faces of the declining hilltop community. "Well, I certainly think it is a good cause you are fighting for. Those houses look mightily fine to me," Miss Ginger stated with a heretofore unrevealed inner strength. "And if you need anybody to join you in City Hall, count me in," causing Lynn to feel some admiration for this plucky old lady, who then got up to serve them some light refreshments. There was always a little bit of gumption in these elderly ladies that made Lynn wonder if the secret to their long lifespans was this hidden, come what may, determination that they all seemed to possess. At the very least, it didn't appear to do them any harm, other than to confound their adult sons, who were usually only too eager to have them ensconced in a nursing home rather than fooled with the tedious chore of feigning filial concern by visiting them briefly once every 2 weeks or so. The rest of the afternoon then went by pleasantly, as Lynn and Kathleen partook of Miss Ginger's homemade pecan pie and struggled to keep from fainting out of the ensuing blood sugar drops. But it was always difficult to be anything but lighthearted when talking about family history with these elderly kith and kin, even if sometimes the family history could tend towards the less than ideal. The Wares never forgave Maria for her elopement, and she was eventually disinherited, Miss Ginger continued, back on the original topic. "We know," Lynn and Kathleen responded in unison, with Lynn recalling only too vividly the one time they went to an extended Ware family reunion when she was a child, and experienced firsthand the closest thing to an Amish shunning that an English person could experience. Even though the Wares weren't Amish, they had mastered the art of snubbing so well it made one wonder if there wasn't some hidden connection between the two. But my father was still very proud of his Ware ancestry, Miss Ginger commented with a special glow of unreserved admiration on her face that daughters both young and old have when talking about their daddies. And he even joined the Sons of the American Revolution through his Ware ancestor. The next evening, Lynn found herself getting ready for the Summer Young Professionals Social. It was a group the city had recently started in order to attract and keep young professionals in the area, with most of Lynn's college friends having moved away several years prior. Lynn decided to attend the event in order to meet some new peers. She was approaching the outermost rim of the age bracket for the Young Professionals organization, so she decided to cough up the required entry fee for the event and head over to the exclusive rooftop restaurant where the social was being held. "Have you ever been here before?" the young man taking the entry fees asked Lynn when she approached the sign and table, to which Lynn nodded in the negative, since this was her first time to attend any of the Young Professionals events. Surprised by her response, he handed her some extra drink tickets with the comment to make the most of it. Feeling a little bit unsure as to what to do, Lynn began moseying around the rooftop and looking around. The view of the city's river from the rooftop was certainly impacting, yet it seemed like at first the social was going to be a sparsely attended one. Nonetheless, as time went on, more and more people began filing in, filling Lynn with wonder, for it had never dawned on her that there were so many young professionals in town. Being an only child, she was always surrounded by her mother and the elderly ladies they visited, so this was quite a novelty for her. And spotting an empty seat at a table, Lynn walked over there and asked the rest of the people seated there if she could join them, to which they readily agreed. They seemed congenial enough, but after the basic introductions were made, they soon began talking about college football. College football? In the middle of the summer? Lynn thought to herself incredulously. The first games weren't even going to begin until the 1st of September, and those were just going to be the throwaway games, the one in which the opposing teams would only score one touchdown compared to the 70 points of the athletic powerhouses. And that would only be because the head coaches finally relented and put in their third and fourth string players to give their mainstays a much-needed reprieve. Lynn tried to maintain an interest in the conversation, but being more artistically inclined, she couldn't summon up anything at all to contribute. So, after a short while, she excused herself and got up to mosey around some more. "I've never really been around young professionals before," she realized, making feelings of insecurity set in. She claimed this as her hometown, but as she glanced around the room at the well-dressed crowd that seemed in a state of arrested development from their college fraternity days, Lynn realized that she knew absolutely no one. And upon that realization, she decided to make her way to the restroom and then leave. Fate intervened, however, since just as she was about to reach the door to the ladies' restroom, this jovial-looking young man with thick-rimmed glasses approached her. He was blending the casual and the professional look by sporting a navy blue suit jacket with some long beige pants. "Leaving so soon?" he inquired of Lynn, to which Lynn responded in the affirmative. "At least let me introduce myself first," he replied. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed that snippet of my story. If you'd like to hear the rest of it, maybe we can, maybe I can do a full reading sometime. Hope all is well. Bye-bye.